Hello and welcome back to Leviathan News. We have another interview for you today. We have a Milestones NFT who I found yesterday after the announcement of China's Web3 white paper. CZ put out a post, and then Milestones came along and did a huge tweet thread reading the entire white paper and sharing a bunch of insights and information about what the Chinese government actually said. So, Milestones, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the introduction. So yeah, I read the white paper because I speak both Chinese and English. I'm from somewhere in Asia, and I basically just looked at the white paper and thought that the West or generally the crypto Twitter would want to actually find out or know more about what is happening in China. So I thought that it would be good if someone just read through the paper and translate some of the important nuggets of information to everybody.
So, what exactly was covered in the white paper, and what was surprising to you about it?
I think what is covered in the white paper is the general endorsement of the concept of Web3 and the technology itself. I think that is unsurprising because China, generally speaking, believes in any technology that can advance its control, its economy, kind of thing. So I think generally speaking, the fact that they endorse the idea of a blockchain, NFTs, and Web3, it's not unexpected. What is surprising, I think, is two things. One is in years of in China, there was like a ban of crypto exchanges or even mentioning crypto. So if you want to run crypto events, it was not as easy. For example, venues would not actually want to host you. But recently, I think they've been relaxing it. So today, I just attended a sandbox event in Shanghai. So generally speaking, you see that it's a shift towards that itself. I think that's one of the two things that is surprising. The second thing that is surprising, I think, it's really the language they use. So part of the paper, they quote multiple government papers that actually endorse the idea of users having a free control of their data and how users can actually monetize their data. Whether or not that's just a principle they cite or whether or not it's going to go into policy, I think no one really knows.
Very interesting. So, I liked some of the things that were mentioned and not mentioned. So, you say in your thread that uh, networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum were not mentioned, and also Vitalik wasn't mentioned, but Gavin Wood was mentioned in there. And you also made some or put some information about in there about how the white paper highlighted that the metaverse idea they think was coined by a Chinese scholar, not American.
Yeah, so I think it's, to be fair, it's quite typical China. Okay, firstly, I'm a foreigner, so I may be biased, but it's quite typical China to want to claim that they created something. So basically, the way they did it was, okay, there's this very famous, snow crash book in 1992, and what happened was that they said they came up with this concept, but hey, 2 years ago in 1990, we actually had a scholarly concept. So basically, they didn't lay claim to the fact that they actually have this they created this term, but someone actually came up with a similar term. So I think basically the first thing is China wants to allude to the fact that their scholar came up with this concept and it's not really a Western or American invention, which, to be fair, it's quite typical of them. I think it's expected of them, and it's just them wanting to lay claim that coined or created this term itself. I think that's the first thing. The second thing was I was quite surprised as well that, because if you mention the ETH chain itself, everybody would think of Vitalik. But generally speaking, they credited Gavin Wood for it. There was no mention of the ETH chain in general. So I think in the paper, basically, they actively avoided mentioning Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the chains, and they include their own chain, which chain maker. I think it's called in Chinese. I can't remember its name, but it's called chain maker in English. And basically, it is the government's or the Chinese government's official web chain. So if they're going to build an NFT market or any crypto applications, it will be built upon that itself.
Interesting. I've not heard of that network before.
I can share the link of the network later. I googled and found it yesterday as well, and it's the one that the Chinese government is using.
Interesting. Now, can you talk about the three phases that are going to be happening? So they think we're in the preliminary phase right now, and then there's a transitional phase, and then a maturity phase, which we eventually get towards, I guess, full AI alignment and implants in our brains.
Correct. So I think they see the Web3 or the technology itself is that it goes through three phases. The first phase, the preliminary phase, where everybody out here, it's finding out or like probing around to see what exactly technology is and what it encompasses. So the preliminary phase, we have already achieved things like transactions online. So whether or not for people to actually their NFT merchants or boxes, basically their NFT concept is basically like a blind box where you get a physical figurine kind of thing. You can scan your face. So their preliminary phase, basically it's on the consumer front. What happens is that you actually have transactions between consumers that can be verified on the blockchain or can use some form of verification that is electronic, whether or not it is via your QR code, your face scanning, those kind of, and there will be some push or trial and error on the government, the industrial element of it. So that's the start of the preliminary phase, which Web3 is at the infancy and we are at this stage. Then you will move on to the transitional phase, where basically governments and industries will actually be actively trying to incorporate the blockchain or the users into it. So they cite some examples like food technology about, in China, food tech is big, but where do you get your food sources? So they cite those areas where industries and governments could be using Web3 technology in itself. And then with the final maturity phase, they argue that's where 6G. They didn't really explain basically 6G. I would assume it builds from 5G itself, and they mentioned the idea of a neural link where basically people can actually implant something in your brain and you can connect it to the metaverse or the virtual world itself. I think what's very interesting is that they also subscribe to the view that there will be a blurring of lines between the digital and the physical world itself. So you have both physical and digital experiences, and both of it will be very similar to one another or intertwined with one another itself. So I think that's quite interesting. And they did mention like RTFK, the shoes and things like that. So I think those are also the direction in which they are going towards as well.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting how it was more of like a top-down approach where there's like large companies that will be executing this vision, and then essentially like a typical like producer distributor pipeline that you would find in economics that we have now versus the kind of bottom-up system that we have in Ethereum and the rest of crypto.
Yes, I think that's very typical of the Chinese government or the Chinese economy. If you look at the Web2 company, in, for example, AI or like the platforms, usually there will be like, obviously at the start, there'll be many companies competing to actually become like the mini unicorns. Actually, they use this term mini giants. Mini giants basically are like companies that SMEs that actually build up enough users and platform to actually onboard users, and these people will be the ones leading the fight. So what's even more interesting is that I don't know, they actually have named companies that will be leading this Web3 push itself. So things like Baidu, things like Tencent, and what the different large companies role actually play. So it's quite interesting in the sense that if you look at it from a political standpoint, at the Senate, basically people are like saying that these companies are, the front of the Chinese government, and basically the Chinese companies are saying no, we are not. But yet in this white paper, the government are actually citing these companies to be leading the charges in the different areas like 5G, like AI, like VR. So each company itself has a role to play in actually advancing this Web3 vision that the government has or wants to push forward.
So can you help us like understand where this report came from, and like, specifically what I'm thinking is like, who is this agency, and like how much does this signal seriousness, and like what is actually going to happen in China?
Okay, this agency, if you look at the report itself, I think it's quite obvious on the first or second page, like I would say a business science park in the Beijing itself. So basically Beijing have this thing called Zhonghuancun, which basically it's where all the tech startups actually go towards. So if you have a tech startup or you're a startup, they have this like business park or eco park where all the companies are involved, and obviously they have a ministry that actually runs this eco park and leads the initiatives itself. So this, I think it's a research group within this legitimate government agency itself. So the government agency basically releases the report based on their in-depth studying of the Web3, and they would give the suggestions towards the government. And once they give proof at the higher up, it would actually spread down to the different province itself. So this is the first time I think they release a working white paper with very clear direction towards what the different cities across will be doing. So there are like 30 provinces out there that are already doing some effect to this policy itself. So they didn't really give much details, but they did state that, you know, different provinces, like for example, Shanghai, for example, is advocating the NFT platform itself, while the Zhejiang province is advocating trying to make the blockchain with like the global rules or the global system itself. But again, no specific.
Well, so
China's
I mean, again, go ahead, Garrett.
Oh, please finish your thought.
No, I mean, I was just going to ask, like, you know, we all have our opinions and those are worth what they're worth. But I mean, is your read on this that this is, you know, a like pivot or like a real change or a real acceleration or something from China? Or is this kind of, you know, academic paper or just kind of like minor paper that kind of comes out and doesn't really reflect what is like driving the Chinese like government and the Chinese intention and the Chinese just like energy right now?
I think there is a real pivot towards the acceptance or the warming of the idea of the blockchain and what Web3 ethos are for. But if the West are expecting, or like, you know, we are expecting it to pump our backs and like, you know, they're going to ban in China, I think that is unfounded. I don't think that the government is going towards unbanning crypto exchanges, legalizing trading of other chains in China itself, but they are going to relax the discussion of crypto and Web3 itself. So like I said earlier, like 2 years ago or a year ago, very difficult to post an article on the WeChat platform, which is the official platform most Chinese use, regarding crypto or any crypto related words. So there will be filters or censors that ban those words, and your account could get banned if you do so. But now I'm seeing more on the ground crypto events, crypto articles popping up. So you can see a warming of idea of the concept of Web3 itself or the crypto, but whether or not it will change, like reacting and banning of platforms, the advocation of like Ethereum network, I am highly doubtful. But as a concept and a direction, I think moving towards that, and you can see from the various actions, it's still early days because the white paper was a week ago. So more or less, you can see like more and more events are popping up in Shanghai, Beijing, and more companies are actually working with the industry itself.
So as of tomorrow, Hong Kong is going to be opening up crypto trading, which is supposed to have some kind of spillover effect because it allows mainland Chinese to invest indirectly via Hong Kong. What's your expectations for what happens when that goes live?
I think, to be fair, most of the Chinese who are already engaged in crypto are actually engaged in crypto via Hong Kong or via VPN or their own means already here. I think that definitely would be more institutional interest. I've heard from my Hong Kong friends that there are more institutional companies actually approaching law firms, approaching different groups to actually invest in crypto. I think there's definitely a desire for exchange. But if you're talking about the average person in China, like for example, you or I wanting to invest, I think it's still not as easy as it seems. So, but for the institutions, for the rich who were already circumventing the rules, it's probably now more legitimate for them to just go because there is already the Hong Kong route itself. So I would say that you would probably see some increase because now it's legit. So the rich as well as the institutions can just do it directly as opposed to it or doing it in a round way. But for the average Chinese person, to be very honest, I don't think Hong Kong's laws and rules really apply to them. I'm talking about the Chinese person in mainland.
Is there any projects or maybe companies that are really standing out when it comes to the buzz from this announcement? Is there stuff that we're able to keep an eye on just because we're not as close to, I would say, the crypto Twitter of those markets? So curious, like what you're hearing, what people are excited about.
I think generally speaking, I'll speak first from the paper itself, then I'll speak from on the ground sentiment. So from the paper itself, the government has not cited any small companies. The company they cited are all the big companies like Baidu, Tencent, TikTok, ByteDance. Those companies are explicitly named by the governments and the tech and the platforms that they're building and the direction they're building. So I think that's one. Two, I think on the ground, actually, to be fair, even before the white paper, there were many blockchain companies or crypto or Web3 companies building different things. So, and today after I attended the Sandbox event in Shanghai, basically these companies want to do two markets. They want to build chains and products that the government allows them to use internally within China itself, but they're also building products and things that can, for example, Sandbox, they are building on, let's say, NFT worlds. There are companies already doing this itself, and a lot of local companies try to get both of the pie. So when I went for today's event, I could see like because today's event was for creators, so all the companies, the small to actually share and pitch to and try to get them to let them like onboard them onto their platform itself. So I think that there is definitely an interest from the Chinese community and companies to actually buy into the Chinese blockchain. I think work with the Ethereum, the other networks itself out there.
Got it. That makes sense. Definitely seen a big push on the Binance side. Like I think they've been leading. I've seen the days where they're actually beating ETH on volumes, and I think a lot of that's led really by the East. So cool to see from that standpoint. But it sounds like mainly a metaverse focus too.
Yeah.
Is real quick another one on that. Is there any like big maybe ventures or companies that we can follow some of the investments they're making based off of either really this announcement or some of the changes coming up? Like one that comes to mind that I haven't looked at in a very long time is Genesis Block Ventures. Like I know they were Genesis Block was massive like 2 years ago, and like I haven't heard anything of them. So like curious if there's any like big, I would say funds or just capital that we could follow.
I don't think they basically mention, like I said, they are quite, I think they are probably intentionally vague about the companies itself, but they did name they did ask the companies to continue investing in like Roblox, the company in America. So basically they also have instructed the big companies to continue investing in all the Western companies that are building the different metaverses. So the Sandbox, Roblox, they did mention that to continue investing in those through proxies or through different mediums itself. So if you're asking me for a company that no one has heard of, I'm doubtful. They probably wouldn't mention this for strategic reasons, but they will probably mention those that they're already interested in and open stake in, and they have basically told the companies like Baidu and ByteDance to, you have our endorsement or you have our direction to continue to invest in the Western and base one of them. They also named Sandbox as one of them. If you guys can invest, the business in this can invest in them. I think basically they also want to have a hand in the pie of the other side of the blockchain while they develop their own blockchain. I think that's their goal as well.
Yeah, when I read the white paper, I'm heavily reminded of the Flow network, where there's a like kind of network. It could be decentralized, but then the individual app layers on top are centralized. They can issue NFTs through there, and they can essentially provide like a walled garden experience. So when you think about like being in a video game or collecting cards through like Top Shot or something, that was all done on the blockchain, on the Flow blockchain, but it was all done in these kind of walled gardens where you couldn't take it off, right? Like you own the thing, it's in your wallet, but the thing itself is not transferable to like other parts of the system without the approval of the like distributors of the content.
Yes,
I haven't heard of Flow in a long time.
There's a good example actually. Even before this, I think last year, I recall McDonald's actually launching a NFT itself. I think that was built their own blockchain itself, and you couldn't actually transfer the NFT out the blockchain. You could trade it, but there was limitations as to how much you could pay. how much you could pay for it, how much you could use. Basically, I think the McDonald's example, they basically launched McDonald's NFT, and you have to be someone who have consumed a lot of McDonald's, and you can actually buy the NFT itself, but you can't actually send it out to your MetaMask wallet or send it out to another wallet. It has to be within the chain itself, and there were limitations placed as to how much money you could make from it. That means you couldn't sell it for 10x the price. There was limitations on that as well.
We're getting some, I think Milestones is having some connection issues. Let's see if he comes back. Yeah, it's really an interesting paper. The link is in the show notes below. It's unfortunate we're having some technical issues with Milestones here, but
maybe China banned Bitcoin.
Yeah, okay. He's back now.
Yeah, sorry. I think that the connection dropped or something.
Yes.
Yeah, where
so,
were we?
Oh yeah, no, you were just talking about the McDonald's thing, but yeah, the walled garden system does make a bit more sense for what the Chinese government probably is trying to do, because then if they do have a walled garden, they can freely deploy like a digital yuan inside of it that is able to exist. You can freely go back and forth between your bank account and whatever these metaverse systems are, and it would be acceptable for the Chinese government for its citizens to use. I think we might.
To be fair, they've already have the digital already on the market. So I'm not privy to using it yet. Okay, so basically the way in which China works, we don't use cash. There is cash, but we basically use super apps like scanning accounts to actually scan QR codes for itself. But the government did actually in last year launch a digital yuan, and it was pushed out firstly to locals, and the way in which they push it gave you free money, but this free money could only in certain food stores, certain areas. So I think that the digital yuan is something we're trying to develop and incorporate. I think that's the building block. You see it basically. They want to get this into the hands of have their money through Tencent and Alipay. Yes, they are government linked, but they're still private companies. There is not much control over it. But if it's a digital yuan itself, I think it's quite simple that the government can actually control or limit your use for it itself.
Well, I think
and I think what is interesting to most people or like the listeners, I think I've been looking at the credit scores system about cutting. So I think in China, I think what people need to know is that there is a social credit score where basically your behavior in public, whether or not you end on time, whether or not you're drunk or nuisance in public, this adds to your credit score. So if you are someone not patiently fighting, you will get a lower credit score. And what I think scary for most people is that this could limit freedom to buy an air ticket, your freedom to live out. So if you're in Shanghai and you want to go to Beijing, because your credit score is bad, you can't actually leave Shanghai because they
Yeah, this is the point that you make, and we'll leave it to you to leave some last comments here. You said that it's a scary world if the U.S. is going to like cast away Web3 and leave the Chinese to develop their version of Web3 and incorporate all of their social credit score systems into it. And you called on Balaji to help the West wake up and develop a better system.
Yeah, exactly. I think generally speaking, speak for the rest, I speak for myself. I told everybody I'm neither pro. Okay, I'm my business and I'm Chinese, but I'm not like Chinese China. I'm a foreigner. I'm from Singapore. I'm not pro anything that gives us the freedom to transact, the freedom to do what we want. But looking at the way in which the US, especially and EU, is pushing away crypto, and the fact that China is going, I think most people need to understand that this thing called China efficiency. China wants to do something. Whole of government, the whole of industry, the whole of the population will actually do it. So they can build in 6 hours. They can railway station in a day or and actually mobilize the military, everybody to actually help with it itself. So I think what's scary is that as the West push crypto away and push Web3 away, China is developing and going all in on their own, as some people would call it, dystopian version of a Web3. So you might have a world where, you know, there's the China version of the Web3, which all their citizens and different people are hooked into. And then there is a Western world that basically casts away Web3. I think that's where I feel as a citizen is scary. I want to have an alternative alternative towards whatever they're proposing. No alternative towards what they're proposing, then people are all working.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up on. We had some other news that we'll probably cover tomorrow. There was nothing too major except for some layoffs, which is sad for everybody. But we want to thank Milestones for coming on and talking about China today and helping us. Hey, look at you.
He knows a lot of languages, man.
Okay, see ya. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.